So what a treat to be able to talk to you all today about our projects. It feels quite indulgent to be able to do some work and then tell everybody all about it. So I'm Esther Webb, I'm a speech and language therapist. I work at Great Western Hospital. And I've worked before with Gemma, who's a dietitian, and we were really excited today to be able to talk about our projects because they, like Scott said, they tie in quite well with each other. The themes are quite similar. Gemma and I started out working together on the projects, and then for practical reasons, I split off to do return to practice, and Gemma split off to focus on international recruitment. Gemma, I'll leave you to explain your working situation across AWP and BNSSG.
BNSSG. Okay, so yes, I'm Gemma Collins. So I work for AWP, Mental Health Trust, and so my position spans across BNSSG, which is Bristol, North Somerset and South Gloss, as well as BSW, which you now know what BSW is anyway. And I have had a variety of roles. So here I've been AHP Workforce Development Lead in International Recruitment. I'm also Head of Nutrition and Dietetics for AWP and also do a small clinical aspect for BNSSG. So I suppose I'm here to represent dietetics, but also to represent the mental health side of things. So just to kind of start the session, really just to highlight, that's the area that we're covering, not BNSSG, BSW, sorry. And we're concentrating on return to practice and international recruitment, and we will use a lot of the abbreviations of IR and RTP because it's a bit of a mouthful to keep saying it all the time. So the thing that I suppose what I wanted to highlight was that when we both set out doing these projects, we kind of thought that it was maybe a bigger program of work that was required with regards to actually recruiting people internationally and recruiting return to practice individuals. But actually what we found is that there was a real lack of knowledge among the organisations with leads about RTP and about international recruitment. So it really turned into a bit of a scoping exercise about what knowledge was in existence, and also the understanding, and actually thinking about any barriers and any biases that might have been at play as well.
Yeah, I think we both agreed, didn't we? We started out scoping, then we got very enthusiastic and thought, right, we're going to recruit people to return to practice. We're going to do a big international recruitment project, and we soon realised how long all those things take, which I think is one of the key learnings, isn't it? That actually these things take a lot of time and investment. So it has mainly been a bit of a scoping and informing type project, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we've spent time kind of going to different organisations and meeting with leads, and holding kind of information giving and receiving sessions as well, kind of finding out what people would like to learn from us as well. And I'm hoping that I'm going to click the right one. Yes, there we go. So just a little bit about international recruitment and HCPC registration. The kind of big learning around that is, ultimately in order to work, you need to be a HCPC registered allied health professional. So you would need to kind of set the process rolling with regards to registration. The thing that's recently happened with international recruitment is it's moved online. It was very much a paper exercise. So prior to, I think it was the end of April, May this year, it was you fill out a form, you send it off, it's lots of paperwork, where it's moved online and it's a much quicker process. Supposedly about 60 days. And actually in practice, so I have an individual, a dietitian that's trained in India, that's been working as a support worker in my organisation, and she has now successfully got her registration, and that was less than 60 days. So that's really great, from the initial registration. The things to point out is the fact that it's expensive for some individuals coming from a different country, perhaps. There is anecdotal stories and that's why the car is there, that the individuals have had to sell their car in order to pay the scrutiny fee for HCPC registration, which is just under 540. So it's £540, which to some individuals can be a really significant amount of money, having to sell the family car in order to process that registration. It's quite a significant amount. And as I said, it's supposedly around about 60 days now.
So there's some information on your tables about the HCPC recommendations for individuals returning to practice, which just outlines the minimum number of days that they have to complete in order to return to the HCPC register. So I don't need to repeat that information. They can do some private study. And what's great is there's now some university courses where they can do some modules as well, so people can get that formal learning. But they have 2 years to complete the placement time and to do any learning, which means that people can really spend time to feel comfortable getting back into the profession. There's also a new initiative from Health Education England, which is this return to practice meets international recruitment. So some people have been given funding, even though they haven't actually left practice, but they're an international recruit. So Gemma and I have spoken to 2 individuals who fit that particular description and been able to support them, and they've got that funding towards a placement because they've registered with the Return to Practice programme, but actually they've not really been out of practice, they've just come from overseas. So they're a real asset to whichever organisation decides to host them because they haven't actually really had any time out of the profession, they just need to be orientated to the NHS.
And I think at this point, I probably just like to highlight that I've also been in contact with some other individuals that through kind of therapy leads that have, just interested in working in the UK. What do they need to do? And that's a really apparent that actually that they don't know where they need to go for information. So they're not sure that they actually need to be HCPC registered. They don't know where they need to be looking for employment either, with regards to adverts for jobs. So some of the simple correspondence that I've had with people is, this is the international registration link for HCPC. Generally, if you're newly qualified, you're probably looking at a band 5 position, and it's going to be advertised most likely on the NHS Jobs website. And the response, the feedback from that is actually that's really helpful. I didn't know that, and that's such a really simple bit of information as well.
Yeah, and also just going back to that point, what we've had is really exciting developments where somebody we've supported said, well, actually, I'm an OT, but my husband's an OT, and I've got all these other OT colleagues that are going to come over. So if BSW have got a good reputation for supporting people and encouraging people, that could lead to other things.
Yeah, absolutely. So this slide, very simple. One of the overwhelming things, the theme that came about was, how do I know that this person is employable? That was the question that a lot of people were kind of feeding back. And simply put, well, they need to be HCPC registered. They need to meet that code of conduct and those standards. And also they'll go through the normal application process as well. So, they are just as employable as anybody else that you'd be potentially going through the recruitment process.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing, not to overthink it. Just as if you were employing anybody else, you'd undergo an interview process and you decide what particular development needs they had and what was already a skill that they came with. And it's for the individual to decide if they're right for the role and whether they can apply for the job that you've got available. Not really making it any different to anybody else who you might employ.
And I think also picking up there about the HR role, in the fact that lots of questions that come about, particularly from IR, is about visas and sponsorship, etc. The answer to that is, really make friends with your HR and recruitment representatives. They are practice, they know that information. You as managers, okay, it's useful to have some oversight and some knowledge about it, but also actually, utilize your HR colleagues about that. So some of the information in the packs that we'll send out afterwards is just got some really kind of quick links to information to go through. There's information from NHS employers about International Guide to Recruitment from a nursing perspective that we can apply to an AHP example. And I've actually got some of the kind of paperwork with me today that I can leave on tables if anybody's interested in having a look at.
This is just a quick bit of data. I won't bore you with data, just to show the kind of numbers across the Southwest. We don't have the numbers specifically for BSW, but they're not great numbers for return to practice. And as you can see, that just because somebody has enrolled on the programme doesn't mean they're going to complete within that year. So people do take their time, or they might decide not to complete it. So it's a lot of focus on supporting individuals, and it's very meaningful in those situations, but it's not the big nursing numbers with that established programme. The theme that's come through from return to practice and from international recruitment is that for individuals, this is quite a lonely experience. If you think about any other time when you've returned from work, maybe after maternity leave, after COVID, after a long holiday, you've got your team to come back to and you've got that support. And that's not the case for these individuals. So we'd like you to have a think about, if somebody's coming internationally, what kind of community can they become a part of? Are your team welcoming them?
Another thing I think that I wanted to point out with regards to individual experience, again, this is reported from a member of staff that I've been working with. We used the term rogue trader, didn't we? In the fact that I'm very aware that there are support networks, on Facebook for international recruits with regards to completing their registration. And there are people out there that pertain to help them complete that form and charge £400 for the privilege of completed that form, and actually it to no avail. And that's another cost that potentially these people are experiencing unnecessarily. So there are all of these costs, and putting trust in people in order to help them support in this potentially really quite a tricky thing to navigate. So it is also just being mindful of that. So going into managers' experiences, again, when we were discussing with various colleagues in your organisations, it's time to support an RTP, time to support an international recruit. They would like to support them, but actually don't really know where to start, what to do, what's involved. So it's allowing time for the process. It's allowing, that communication, those contacts. It's thinking about arranging shadowing, arranging placements, and also just kind of that understanding of the process that's involved. So it is seen as a priority by a lot of you, or a lot of colleagues, keen to support, but it's just thinking, actually, what about that process? What do we need to consider? So it's thinking about your level of confidence, how familiar you are with the process, thinking, and sharing positive experiences, and also kind of role modelling success. Now, I'll quickly kind of offer an example with regards to return to practice. We've again successfully appointed a dietitian in BSW in Swindon, who has recently completed her return to practice in a neighbouring trust. She's been out of practice for 16 years and has done, which is a significant amount of time, obviously, but she's come back into work, and she's it's a success story. She's absolutely fantastic. She's come into a band 6 position, and she's kept abreast of things, really confident with her clinical knowledge, but just needs to be that reassuring with regards to the actual workplace that we're in at the moment. So that's a really positive kind of feedback there.
So what we'd like to do is just take a moment for you all to have a think about what support might be needed for a return to practice or an international recruit clinician who comes to you for support. So what particular elements of the process might you need to consider? Right, we're going to call you all back in now. Hopefully that's been enough time to just get at least an idea per table. So I'm going to start from this end of the room and work my way across. So Will's table.
So we were saying the introduction to the NHS, the jargon, the acronyms that are used can be just quite overwhelming for someone who
Absolutely. Yeah, you're spot on. So an orientation to the NHS is really important. The Return to Practice University courses focus quite a lot on that. And also that's what people might be looking for on placement. Their clinical skills might not actually be the issue. It might be, how is the NHS now? What sort of contracts are in place? What funding is there for your individual? That kind of thing. Okay, thank you. Carol's table.
We were just saying, from a manager's point of view, just a how-to guide, really, of how to approach it.
Well, I'm so glad you said that, Carol. So Gemma and I are providing information packs which have the key links that you need for both international recruitment and return to practice to make sure you don't miss a step on the way. For example, if your individual doesn't register with the return to practice programme, you can't then claim the £500 placement provider fee at the end. Thank you. Okay, this table over here. Who's the mic going to? Gina?
So I think from an international recruitment point of view, it is a bit of a voyage of discovery the next year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the things, reflecting on where our nurse colleagues have got to, it's that real sense of staying and thriving, and actually life in the Southwest, and how they can find some housing and how they can have a real sense of community. I think that's going to be the real challenge and the really important piece for us.
I think that's lovely. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I think we can learn a lot from our nurse colleagues, actually. And part of the work that I've been doing, you know, I contacted I think all of the AHP professional bodies, you know, to kind of seek information as to, you know, what information do you hold? And lots of them responded backward to me with, you know, we don't hold information at the moment, but actually it's a project to be in the current financial year now. So I know, you know, particularly I think the physiotherapy and dietetics definitely have kind of got their stream of work kind of starting now. But I know that there are other, you know, with regards to radiography as well. So it's talking to your colleagues, talking to your heads of service, and also linking in with your professional bodies.
Mandy, would you like to represent?
So we kind of took it back a step and thinking about how do we actually find them in the first place? Where do we actually find our international recruits and our return to practice? And then after that, it was very much similar to what other people were saying. Well, what do we do when we actually get them in terms of the support that we need? And how can we, if we've already got a workforce that's severely depleted, how can we actually support them in that workforce environment when actually they're already really, really stretched?
Yeah. I think that's a really good point. Did everybody hear that about, yeah, okay. So one of the pilots that we did on the Return to Practice project was a Twitter competition to ask people to come to us if they were interested in Return to Practice. And we were hoping that would lead then into an NHS jobs advert, which was BSW wide, in order to drum up interest. But actually what we learned from the Twitter competition was just how long it takes to establish contact, find out what kind of placement might be suitable, organise that placement. So to do the NHS job advert in the time period we had just wasn't going to be practical. But I think that's definitely something that could happen in the future in order to sort of drum up this interest in both international recruitment and return to practice opportunities. And where the job can be aligned to a vacancy, you're not having to put in that extra work. So if you've got a particular job that's hard to recruit into, so you advertise it as being attractive for somebody who might be returning to practice because you know that you can put that level of support in there. Okay, which table are we going to next, Kira? Lovely. Okay, Neil's table.
Yeah,
pick a name I know.
Cheers, thank you. We were kind of talking about peer support, buddy support. You know, we all know what to do in our jobs, but you ever change departments or change hospitals and you need a different form for this and a different form for that, and just navigating your way around those channels can be quite challenging. So having that kind of support on the ground, but then we widen that to actually, if you have got people coming from other out of areas, wherever they're from, actually having that other wider community support, because it can be really probably quite challenging moving from one country to another, and then in a completely new country again, not knowing processes, things to do, where to go, etc., etc. So again, having a bit of support. And one of the people on our table worked in Saudi with an expat community and found that expat community was really, really helpful at making sure they had that kind of support as well.
Yeah. So
it could be good to look into those type of support, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's thinking about those buddy systems, potentially, well, not potentially, absolutely, and also mentoring. But it's thinking again, kind of linking up with other hospitals, organisations in the area, but also again linking in with potential other professions as well that are in a similar situation. Absolutely. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm smiling at Kira with the mic because I'm looking at her to see where she's going next. I think you've targeted Ben there, have you?
So I'll just quantify that. I use my calculator for this, but if you're in work full time, you've got 130 hours outside of work to fill your life. So if you come into the UK, that's a lot of time when you're not in work. That's as you've all said, that's something to really think about, isn't it? 130 hours of non-work time to live in this community.
And that's when I think some of those themes we've already had about the strong team around you, but also maybe reflecting on the project that's been happening with podiatry in Swindon, where you've got lots of people coming from the same area, they can form their own network.
And also it's that individual, but they may be coming over with family as well, and thinking about the support for the family members, which is huge. So there's lots of things to consider.
Yeah. Okay.
Ours was a similar one too, in that we'd had experience of somebody coming over, and I think they felt very isolated and alone outside work. And I think that's it. It's maybe on reflection, we probably didn't provide enough support or point them in the right direction for enough support. So I think those are definitely the things. The job side, I'm not saying it's the easy bit, but it is the easy bit. It's making them happy so that then they stay.
Yeah.
And
that's really hard, isn't it, to do as an individual employer. So if it's something that can be done at an organisational level, it's much easier to offer that wider support. Okay, last table, I think.
Very similar themes to other people. So pastoral support, we suggested whether there could be a buddy system, just to help people integrate into organisations, for example, for return to practice and how things might have changed since they last practiced, and then integrate into our cultures and the ways of life we have here for people that are coming in internationally.
Thank you. So I think everything that you have said, we've summarised here. The difference between a buddy and a mentor. So having somebody within your team versus somebody who's giving you that mentoring, a package of support, and perhaps even a preceptorship programme, and really being quite systematic about that person's learning and development needs. We also wanted to think a little bit about the link at your organisation. Would it be useful to have a link person who's responsible for return to practice or for international recruitment, who knows about these things, who knows what networks are out there and who's got the experience to offer?
I think I'll go to the next slide rather than talk more about those. So I suppose our key project recommendations, I'll start with Esther there.
Yes, what we would like to see is a development of the BSW website where these links that we're talking about are there. So anybody who wants to come and work within BSW, and Gemma and I have spoken about this before, knows exactly what the process is and that we are ready to support that and that we know what's going on. And also just knows a bit about the work streams that we're focusing on as a faculty. The next point I think I've just made really, which is about having those links, so links with each other. So if you've got somebody who wants a return to practice opportunity or is an international recruit, but you don't think that perhaps you've got the support, you know what's happening at your neighbouring organisation, perhaps they might be better suited, as well as what Gemma was talking about with the links to the registered bodies as well.
Yeah, so again, in the information that we'll be sending out at the end of these projects is I will include kind of what the professional bodies are doing currently. Some of them have produced some excellent resources that can be utilised by other professional bodies, and also the response from those professional bodies about kind of what stream of works they're starting on now. And then also I can see that one, information on job adverts. So it's also thinking actually, are these jobs that we may be advertising, would they be relevant for somebody that's completed a return to practice? Would it be relevant for somebody that's an international recruit? And also, putting extra information on the job adverts about kind of the local area, what obviously the focus of work, but also what support there might be. So, the example that I gave about, the rogue traders, for example, actually, are there appropriate places that they can be kind of pointed in the right direction of for support anyway? And that's one of the things that we found actually, when we've spoken to people, they've been so grateful for the information, haven't they? And that's just a small amount of time.
And having that link person has been really important as well. I know that's not necessarily relevant to that point, but if you can have somebody who's got the time to support and to just even have a one-off meeting with somebody who's looking to come into your organisation, it does mean so much to that individual, and I think it helps set them on the right path with you. We've also just a bit more about this point of job adverts. I think the theme that's been coming through is when it's tricky to recruit to a position, what people tend to do is they raise the banding or they lower the banding. So what we're suggesting is maybe open it up to these particular areas and see if just putting a line on the job advert to say that it'd be suitable for this type of individual might open your audience up a little bit.
Absolutely. We have got a slide for any questions, but I think we might be overrunning possibly. So we'll maybe move on, but we are absolutely, we welcome any questions during the networking and lunch opportunities. Okay, thank you.